Well, welcome into Rank This, the show that ranks the important questions that you want to know. On the line with me today, of course, the master of the Nickel City Mafia himself, Mr. Mike Thornton. Mike, what's going on tonight, dude?
I'm excited to get back to this, Tony. Rank this. We doesn't we can rank
Back
anything.
after one episode, right?
Back after one episode where we talked about the top 5 things a man should never wear. Now we're talking sports. It's not always sports. I know Nickel City Mafia is typically all about Buffalo, and then some. Most in particular about the Buffalo Bills. But I'm excited, and especially to be here with Jake and you. It's always a fun time.
Well, to your point, this show is really designed to take hot topics, hot takes, and talk about the top five things. It could be food related, could be sports related, could be life related. Really, what this is, it's a warning for you, things you should stay away from, things you should think about, things to consider, all these different things. And of course, you mentioned it, burning the midnight oil on the East Coast. We've got our boy Jake. Jake, what's going on, dude?
Dude, not much. I'm excited to be a part of this. You know what? I listen, for anyone that's watching out there, if you have not seen the first part of this Rank This series with the clothing, the top 5 things a man should not wear, go do yourself a favor and watch it. It is incredible. I find myself going back to it and laughing harder and harder every time. I've seen it now 2 times all the way through. So yes, highly recommend. I'm honored to be a part of this, gentleman. So
Well, it's one of those
excited.
things, right? Like we Mike and I debate these things. All of this really started way back when we would carpool to work before COVID, and we would have these weird conversations about all these different things. We'd wax poetically about our own opinions on like a myriad of different topics. So I'm hopeful that as we kind of get more into the Ranked This show, we'll bring some more topics up. I think we like to keep it light. We like to keep it funny. But to your point, Mike, tonight we're going to start with probably the biggest sporting news out there right now, other than maybe March Madness. Obviously, that's happening, and the world's captivated what's happening in college basketball. But for us that follow the NFL, it's never off season. We've got the draft, we've got free agency, and here we are talking about the top 5 free agent signings. And again, just to set it up appropriately, we're saying the top 5 best players. Doesn't mean the guys that made the most money. It doesn't mean the guys that are the most interesting or at the premier position, but guys that we feel are the most impactful free agents going to their new team, the biggest signings, right? And so we talked a little bit off air about kind of how those moves and which guys we liked, and we were able to kind of center in on 5 guys that we felt were the best free agent signings of the 2025 season, which obviously hasn't started yet, but free agency is well into it and obviously winding down as we approach the draft. So let's just jump into it, gentlemen. Number 5, I'll take it as mine, even though we did have some debate before the show about whether or not he's a top free agent. But how can you ignore Sam Darnold? $105 million. He has one very productive year in Minnesota, and he finds himself cashing in with a massive paycheck in Seattle. How do you guys feel about Sam Darnold to the Seahawks? Jake, I'll kick it over to you first. Obviously, um, a very difficult player to be able to gauge on whether or not you got the ceiling from Sam Darnold last year, or realistically, if you get the right play calling in the right system, that's what you can expect to see from Sam Darnold. What do you think about this move?
Well, what I do like about this move, and I think it's something that maybe a lot of people don't even realize, he's going to Seattle. He got a bag, of course, right? But his new offensive coordinator is going to be Clint Kubiak. So Jim Kubiak's Gary Kubiak. I'm sorry, not Jim
Yeah.
Kubiak. Gary Kubiak's son. So he was the OC for the Saints last year, and he's now going to Seattle to be the OC there. But he also worked with Sam Darnold, I believe, back in San Francisco when Sam Darnold was the backup to Brock Purdy there. So kind of had a little bit of a revitalization there in San Fran, too. People even saying, like, hey, if Purdy gets hurt, you got a guy in Sam Darnold who can come in and do some things, So, while people say last year was like the revitalization, I mean, I think that whole revitalization period started in San Fran. Played extremely well in the preseason. Then when he actually had to come in for Brock Purdy, did a solid job. So reuniting with Clint Kubiak, which is a nice pairing, if you will. Now, the only issue with Seattle is they did just trade away DK Metcalf. They also got rid of Tyler Lockett, longtime Seattle Seahawk. But they got some dogs there on offense. You got Kenneth Walker, you got JSN. You just signed Cooper Kupp to basically replace DK Metcalf. And then I think their other outside receiver right now, as of this recording, is none other than MVS. So Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So that is my only concern is like, hey, maybe it's not enough weapons. He doesn't have the same amount of weapons as he did in Minnesota, but I do think it's a good move because he is reuniting with one of his former coaches. And on top of that, you get a little bit younger at the quarterback position. Like Geno Smith maybe only has a couple years left, right? Did have a really nice season in terms of statistics, like passing yard wise, played pretty well. Is it an upgrade from Geno Smith? I think at the very least, you're going from one to another, and it's, you're just replacing one with the other, essentially, right? But what I like here is obviously the upside, him having the familiarity with the coaching, and then he's still going to a team that has some weapons. Now, I know a lot of people feel like maybe this is going to be a down year for Seattle, but looking at their defense and looking at this young offense, I don't know if that's going to be the case. I know the NFC West is going to be an interesting division, but the 49ers are down. The Rams, we don't know what to expect. The Cardinals, again, we don't really know what to expect with them. So I feel like they could still be competitive in this division, and I think the Sam Darnold move is actually a pretty good signing for them. So, quarterbacks are getting paid a lot of money. He is a starting quarterback in the NFL. He's on average making, $33.5 million a season? That's not too bad. It's a good move by Seattle.
It's interesting that you say that, Mike. He's coming off a year where he threw 35 touchdown passes, over 4,000 yards through the air. He had a quarterback rating of basically 103. Clearly one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL last year. But is it a one-hit wonder? I think that's what everybody was curious about. I made the argument off air when we were talking earlier that it might have behooved him to stick around in Minnesota for one more year and maybe test things out there, right? You've got JJ McCarthy, a young quarterback that obviously the folks there were very high on. They drafted him in the first round. But let's not forget, Sam Darnold was a first-round draft pick. You don't draft guys in the first round if there isn't something superhuman about that person, right? Unbelievable speed, the ability to have a quick reaction, a cannon for an arm, whatever the case may be. There has to be something very special about that player for a franchise to take a risk on him in the first round. He was taken by the Jets back in, 2018. He was there for 3 years. They were mired in just kind of mediocrity and things didn't end well. He bounced around between the Panthers and 49ers. Jake talked about the time backing up Brock Purdy there. He lands in Minnesota, probably a ceiling landing spot for him. The rookie blows out his knee, and all of a sudden he's the guy, right? Like he lands perfectly in a quarterback-friendly system that created what was Kirk Cousins. Do you think this guy, Sam Darnold, is the guy that he was in Minnesota? Did Seattle make a colossal mistake here?
Oh, I think they made a mistake. Colossal mistake. He's a one-year wonder. I think he was exposed in the playoffs. Seattle better be able to block for him. That I'm not sure what their O-line looks like right now. The O-line better protect him. I think
it was one of the worst O-lines last year. Like, it was pretty bad.
Yeah. So the last time we saw him, they were just blitzing the heck out of him, and he just wasn't making plays. He's not known for running with the ball. That's a lot of money to pay a guy who's now on his fifth team. 15. Now, Tony, you say, yeah, there's something special about him. That's why they drafted number one. But something special was that he was a bust. And here he is with his fifth team. I love a guy who makes a comeback, but dude, fifth team? You tell me the other four teams, they, he just didn't produce. They saw something, they moved on from him. He got lucky. He has good, Justin Jefferson, my gosh, you give me some weapons like that, I think Jake will throw for 3,000 yards throwing to Justin Jefferson.
I don't know about that, Mike.
Tony will for sure. So I don't know. I think they're paying. It's a lot of money. I'm happy for him. And like you said, Tony, I wouldn't have stayed around in Minnesota. Somebody offering me that type of money, I'm running as fast as I can to take that money. This is 15. This is probably make or break for him. This contract, and either he's gonna smell it up and never get a decent contract again, or he's gonna do something with this. We'll see. But I think it's a big mistake by Seattle.
It's interesting you bring it up because, you think about Sam Darnold, right? And, in the hierarchy of quarterbacks in the NFL, like there was a conversation, Jake, last year during the course of the year where he was the front runner for the MVP. Like, people were like, yep, Sam Darnold is the MVP this year of the regular season. And, we find ourselves, because Mike alluded to it, the way things ended down the stretch for them in the playoffs and kind of how he fell apart toward the back end of the season, and fell apart maybe a little bit strong, but we saw those flashes of what we saw when he was with the Jets and Panthers, where it was like a guy who was uncomfortable and under pressure. We started to make bad throws in very, very important moments. And people were like, okay, they were just waiting to see the cracks. And Mike talked about it a little bit. It's very uncommon in the NFL where we see a guy basically wash or be a bust and then come back. But it's not unheard of. Geno Smith is a perfect example of a guy who was a first round draft pick, a franchise quarterback. Everyone said he's a bust. He goes to Seattle, and all of a sudden now he is a top 10, top 12 quarterback in the NFL. Can Sam Darnold be that kind of guy?
Tony, so again, like Jake mentioned earlier, yeah, he had DK Metcalf to throw to. He had Tyler Lockett to throw to. Just those two guys alone will help your stats. And it's crazy. Like Geno, man, I didn't think he was still in the NFL. I remember seeing him years ago and just struggling in New York. But yeah, so I think it matters who who the skill players were around him. Had a good running back there, and so I don't know. I think that again, I'll stick to my guns here. Just
Here's
don't
the
think.
thing, too, though. So I just wanted to look at this just
Yeah.
based on numbers and what his contract was. And really, when you look at it, his cap hit this year is only 13.4 million. So the following season, he's going to make more money. But his total amount guaranteed is only 52.5 million, which is 17th most amongst starting quarterbacks right now. So pretty middle of the pack when you think about it. I know it's a lot of money, but you got to remember this market is so inflated right now, especially at the quarterback position, receiver position. I mean, you look at these offensive skill positions, they're getting paid a lot of money. And when you look at how much Sam Darnold's making, I mean, he's just barely making more than like Bryce Young, Caleb Williams. Geno's making 40 million guaranteed in Vegas. But and then Baker Mayfield at 50 million guaranteed in Tampa. I mean, that's really the only quarterback here that's below him that I could say should be making more than him, So I think when you really look at it, he's right in line with a lot of these rookie quarterbacks or these second-year quarterbacks that, have this guaranteed contract. So the overall contract, while it's a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, as a starting quarterback in the NFL, it's really not that much. So I think it's a good move by him. He went and got paid. He gets this, 52.5 million guaranteed contract, 100 million total. He's going to be a starting quarterback. He's got some good young offensive weapons, reunites with his former coach. I think there's a low risk, high reward type of situation here. Maybe not as low risk as some other guys, but not too bad.
I mean, the other part of it to think about is, who were the other quarterbacks that were on the market this year, right? If you were a team that was hungry for a quarterback, you were looking for a franchise quarterback that'd make a difference, a marketable difference in your team. The cupboard was pretty bare this year in terms of guys that were out there in the marketplace. I mean, we talked about it off air a little bit, but like you could make an argument that Justin Fields was the next best quarterback on the market available in free agency, a guy who was basically a backup last year. You could say was a bust, to use Mike's term, in Chicago. And people are kind of giving the Jets their flowers for the deal they did with Justin Fields. Here's a question I'll toss out to both of you, and I'll throw it to you first, Jake. If Sam Darnold is the 14th, 15th best quarterback in the NFL, square mid quarterback this year for the Seattle Seahawks, is that a win for the Seahawks or a loss for the Seahawks?
I think it's a win. I think you're basically replacing him with Geno Smith, and you're getting a younger version, essentially. He's like 4 or 5 years younger than Geno. So actually might even be more. I think Geno's in his, almost mid-30s now?
Yeah, he's a few years older.
Yeah,
than
what is
Darnold.
he? He's 34 years old. Sam Darnold, 27 years old. So you have a younger player, hypothetically should have a lower chance of fizzling out sooner and a lower chance of being injured, right? So you're either going to pay Geno Smith, a decent amount of money, or you're going to roll with Sam Darnold. And coming off a great season and, again, reuniting with that former coach who helped start that blossoming period, in my opinion, for him, I think is huge.
Mike, what do you think? If we get Sam Darnold as the 15th best quarterback in the NFL, you can make an argument that's damn close to Jake's point where Geno Smith was last year. They would have had to pay Geno a lot more money to keep him around. Do you think this is a good signing for the Seahawks?
Yeah, when you put it that way, I have to agree with you. I mean, it is a $52 million gamble. Okay, 52 million is a lot of money.
It is.
Like you said, that's the guaranteed portion of the contract. Um, but like you said, Tony, who else was out there? Right? They could have went for Russ, but Rice is he's pretty, he's close to one and done. And then you had Fields that they could have went after, and Fields, same thing. I mean, if I'm looking at those three, I'll take the younger Darnold who had coming off a good season. Maybe he rides the momentum. But so yeah, Tony, I have to agree with you guys if you're putting it that way.
That to me tells me that Seattle is not looking to be in this situation where they tank. Although it does appear that way. They trade DK Metcalf, they get rid of Tyler Lockett and some of their other assets, right? But their defense is super young and talented. This offense, yeah, the offensive line needs work. Like Charles Cross, left tackle. I don't know. I mean, there's some guys that, might not be the best answers at those positions there. And I think Charles Cross is a fine player. He's a first round pick for a reason. But like you look across the O line there, they might have to do some reworking there. And they might go that way in the draft. But this to me says, hey, we're not looking to start over. We're going to try to build off of what last year was. We're going to go sign this guy with some upside, and we're going to run the table. I think the NFC West is actually more wide open than a lot of people think. I know the Rams are probably the top team right now heading into this new season, but like the other teams, some question marks, including Seattle, right? So I think for them, it's a case where they're not looking to draft a quarterback this year. They probably do go O-line or maybe receiver or whatever, and they're going to look to run the table.
Yeah, Sammy Scrambles in Seattle for the Chickens. It's not a bad move. All said, all done, right? It's not a bad move. To your point, it's a division that I think a lot of people have as a toss-up. The Rams are one major catastrophic injury away of not being very good. If they don't have that quarterback in that system, that's a completely different team. Yes, they've done a lot in the draft over the last couple of years. They have very good young talent. At the same point in time, like there's nothing special about the Rams compared to the other teams in that division. I think Arizona is a wild card. And I think Seattle looked at the board and said, okay, let's get somebody where if we get 80% of last year's Sam Darnold, that's a win for us because that's probably better than what we would have got from Geno Smith. So again, I think it's a great signing because of all of the intangibles involved with it. We'll flip over to the other side of the ball. And Mike, this is your guy. There were other safeties in this, what's the word that I'm going to use? This cycle of free agency that got more money. Bynum, I think, got more money than he did. I think Mora got more money than he did. But you really like the Giants going after Javon Holland. You feel like he's a difference maker in that system. Sell me on why he is the best safety move in this free agency cycle.
All right. Well, first of all, I like it for many reasons. Like Jake said pre-show, he gets out of the AFC East. But more than that, this kid is 25 years old. Was drafted a second-round pick in 2021. Had a fantastic year, rookie season. Had a little bit of a down year in 2022. Comes back, and I'm going to give you some PFF scores for this gentleman here. So in his rookie year, 84.7. That's elite. And then he had a down year, a little bit of a down year, 67.2. Not bad. Bounces back in 2023 with a 90.4. And the kid is great on the run support, tackling machine. Has a little bit of a down year. This is probably his worst year. Of his 4 years, he had a down year last year. Now, don't get me wrong. The Dolphins were the fourth rated defense in the league. Going to be that bad. And I know our good friends over there on Finn's Forecast, shout out to them. They are a Dolphins channel. They didn't want to give him the big money. They said they'd want him back if he could have, if it was a friendly deal for the home team. But, when people say that, I'm like, nobody does that really these days. They want the money. But this kid's 25, Tony, 25. He's got a lot of promise left. He's shown his skills. And I think whoever he's paired up with, I'm not sure who the Giants have over there on the other side of him. But Jordan Poyer was that guy last year. And Jordan Poyer, love him. Jake and I love this guy, but there's a reason why the Buffalo Bills let him go. And he's aging and just wasn't that guy. So if you don't have that, when Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, they just fed off of one another when they came over, when they were in their best years. You got to have that counterpart. And he just didn't have that counterpart last year. So I think he's going to come back in a big way. 25 years old. The money looks like this. He's getting, let's see, it's a 3-year deal, 3-year deal, 45.3 million, 30 of it guaranteed. So love this pick for the Giants. I would have loved to see him come to Buffalo, honestly, but hey, steal him away from those Dolphins. But I just think the talent level is just too good right there. So it's a great pick, and that's why I think he was the best safety off the board there.
Jake, I throw it over to you just because, Holland, Mike mentioned he was a tackling machine. When you think about him, he's not necessarily a thumper. He's not a big guy, 6'1", 210, but obviously he plays well in the run, and he hasn't yet been exposed. A lot of times with safeties, especially guys that kind of are the earmark of being a run stopper, a run support guy, it's like if he can't play against the pass. Not the case with Holland. He doesn't have a ton of interceptions, but it's because people don't like to throw against him, right? It's you take your best slot receiver, you take your tight end, you put Holland on him, and you shut that guy down. I mean, what do you think of the signing? And the other piece of it is like, what does this do to the Dolphins defense on the backside of it?
You know what's hilarious is like coming into the NFL, his number one player comp was Jordan Poyer. So, and of course, he plays alongside Jordan Poyer last year and has arguably his worst season as a pro, right? So, yeah, I think the big thing with him is, he's just looking for a fresh new start. He has the talent, he has the ability. When you look at who is available as far as free agent safeties go, like Justin Reed comes to mind. Then there's another kid who's the same age as Javon Holland, Trayvon Moehrig, who played with the Raiders last year, ends up signing with Carolina, 3 years, $51 million. Not as proven, in my opinion, as Javon Holland. Javon Holland looked like he was about to be an all-pro in the NFL. So I think when you look at that and the upside that he brings, again, using that word upside, but at only 25 years old, getting him at this deal, a lesser deal than what Moehrig signed, or Moehrig, I can't even pronounce his last name. Anyways, getting him at a lesser deal than that, I think is actually huge. I think it's a big win for the Giants. You pair him with Tyler Nubin, Shane Bowen, the DC there. I know he's going to love him a lot. He plays a pretty aggressive style of defense. Did some really nice things in Tennessee when he was their DC there. So I think he's going to capitalize a little bit. And I want to say, I'm trying to think of some other guys who they signed, but Paulson Adebo, the corner from the Saints. So they ended up getting, building that secondary a little bit. I think you're pairing him with some nice young players. Deontay Banks, another name there who played with Maryland, was drafted by them in the first round in 2023. So they have a really good young secondary. And I think adding to that with Javon Holland is only going to help, especially in run support, like you said. So, yeah, it's exciting, when you look at what the Giants did on the defensive side of the football, in terms of, who they signed in free agency alone. So I think it's a good match, and it's a very good signing. And for the price that you got him at, in my opinion, probably the second best safety available. I would say Justin Reed was probably number one. You get him at a pretty solid deal here, and he's only 25 years old. So great move by the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, the Giants, they signed Adebo, they signed Holland, they signed Golston up front. I mean, so they got some guys really to kind of change the fingerprint of that defense, right? What they're made of, how they get after things. You got to think that the coaching situation in New York also played into this, right? It's like they really have to try and do some things to change the culture and the direction of that franchise. And so they make some pretty good moves. Obviously, Holland is arguably, other than Adebo, the earmark of that. But this was a good cycle for free agent safeties. When you look at it, there were 4 or 5 guys. You mentioned Moehrig. We talked about Bynum. Like, what's his name? Hufanga, the other
Talanoa,
that went to Denver, right? All of those guys signed for about the same money. And it felt like Holland was the bargain, the steal of all of them, right? Like we had the market set with Bynum at 61 million, but I think is the deal that he ended up getting, and kind of cascaded down from there. But Mike, like, if you're the Giants, what else do you need to do to help I guess, accentuate what Holland brings to the table. We saw what he did in Miami for 4 seasons. Obviously, Jake talked about it. It was a situation that he needed to move on from, and they felt the same way. But this seems like a really good fit and a good start in a defense that they're obviously investing a lot of money into in the offseason. What do you think they need to do with him in order to get that version of him his first couple of years when he was in Miami, that same kind of production?
Yeah, just some like you guys know. Again, I don't know who the Giants have. You mentioned them. As long as that guy is somebody he can trust, and he can play closer to the line, and just make bigger plays. Now, I want to tell you guys something. Um, this year, he was targeted 48 times. This is the second year he's been his most targets. He was targeted in his second year 49 times. And listen to this: his completion percentage when they threw to him, 54.2%. That's insane. This was his best year every year. So in his rookie year, completion percentage was 60%. Then it went up to 77, 71, and now 54. He was targeted 48 times. The other thing, too, 6 yards for every target. And the passer rating for this season was his best in his career. It was 89%. 89, I'm sorry, not 89%, but 89 passer rating, whereas 99 the year before, 113 and 109. So, like you said, Tony, it might be that they don't like to throw to him, but again, this is the year the 48 targets was the second most in his career, and he did a fantastic job. So again, I think it's just having that guy that he can trust behind him or next to him, that he can utilize his skills, play closer to the line, run support, do everything. He's that guy, man. I want him all over the field. He's young. I want him all over the place. I'm going to line him up in so many different places, and really, I've seen so many flashes from that kid, and I think the Giants, like I said, I'll stick to it. They got the deal, and I don't think he's the second one, Jake. I put him above Reed.
Yeah, I mean Reed was a stud though, but again, I think what you saw, well, there's a lot of parity in like those top 5 signings in the safety market this year in terms of free agency. So again, I think as you're evaluating each one of these guys, you evaluate them within your system, right? Like Holland was obviously a better fit in New York than he would have been in Carolina or in Denver, which is why those teams went another direction, right? But you saw all of those guys kind of garner similar money, which means it was a pretty decent class in terms of free agents on the market in the safety class. But let's do this, right? So let's stay on the defensive side of the ball. Let's move on to our number 3 signing in the rank this show. This was a guy going to a team that everyone was like, man, if they could just get some stops on defense. They were decimated. They had some serious injuries on the defensive side of the football this last year. And obviously, this signing was big for them in terms of getting somebody that could help kind of rebuild that foundation for their defense. But Jake, it's your boy DJ Reed, a shutdown corner with the Detroit Lions. Tell us a little bit about DJ Reed. Why do you like this so much?
Well, what I love, going back to the theme with Javon Holland, it gets him out of the AFC East, right? So has some pretty good seasons there in New York, and he's no longer a New York Jet, so we don't have to worry as much about that guy. So love that for us. Secondly, I love the fact that, they lose Carlton Davis. He goes and signs with New England and gets paid a little bit more money. But they replace Carlton Davis with DJ Reed, and I think they're pretty similar in terms of their age. So when you look at it, I actually think you almost upgrade with DJ Reed over Carlton Davis, and you're getting him at a lesser price. So kind of interesting because the former DC, Aaron Glenn, goes to be the head coach in New York, and then you lose DJ Reed, corner. Aaron Glenn played corner in the NFL. He goes to the Lions. So kind of a little musical chairs type thing going on. So it's kind of funny. But anyways, going to be a great fit in this defense. Going to be a great mentor for Terrion Arnold. This secondary in Detroit is already one of the best in football, maybe the best in football. I'm going to say it right now. You got Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, Terrion Arnold, Amik Robertson, and now you got DJ Reed. And again, I think it is, an upgrade over Carlton Davis. And Carlton Davis is a very good football player, but DJ Reed is a hell of a ball player himself. And I think what he gives you is just the ability to play a little bit of man. He could play basically in any type of scheme you throw him in. But I really think, what he did in New York was super impressive. He played alongside Sauce Gardner, who obviously took a little bit of heat off of him, but this gives him a chance to really be that number one corner. And also mentor Terry Arnold and pair him with a really, really good young secondary, maybe the best in football. So great move by the Lions. You don't have to pay Carlton Davis as much money, and you essentially upgrade the position for a little bit less. So great move.
Mike, he mentioned it. Carlton Davis signed for, I think, $60 million in free agency this year. A similar dynamic that we saw in the safety market where kind of 50, 60 million is where the top of this class was kind of shuffled around the league, right? We talked about this like one card, Jake hit on it, going from one team to another, kind of replacing the same kind of guy for a similar player from another team, trying to work out the best deal. But, Reed signs a 3-year deal worth close to $50 million. You could say him, Adebo, Ward, Davis, like maybe they were the class of this. I think you can throw Hobbs into that mix as well. I think his deal was 50 million for 4. But, where do you like DJ Reed in terms of the cornerbacks that were on the market? And like, how do you see the fit on a Dan Campbell team that obviously that spirit of like gambling, of going for it, like that permeates all the way through not only the offensive side of the football, but obviously the defensive side. Do you like the move with Reed? Do you like that they kind of went away from Davis? And how do you see that transition playing out for Reed in Detroit?
I mean, he's been elite his last 3 years, been elite. So as far as, I'm just going to tell you from the player himself, Tony, because again, I don't focus as much as Jake does on these other teams and Campbell and all the, the schemes they run there. But the player himself, top notch, probably the best corner available in free agency. And again, glad to get him out of the East. And Detroit's going to be very happy with him. I think again, I'll give you some numbers from a PFF standpoint, Pro Football Focus. Again, take it with a grain of salt, but it does give you some indication of just how good he's been. So in 2022, his score was 72.5. That's a very good grade. 77.9 in 2023 and 70.7 in 2024. If there's any knock I have on him, it is his 5'9" height. 188. Not a big, not a big dude.
He is small. You're right.
Right. And so those, again, there's a lot of good corners at 5'9" and 5'10". I don't know why I have this thing these days. I want my corners to be 6 foot and over. But DJ Reed has bucked that trend a little bit over the last 3 seasons, and he's a great pickup. And now how it relates to the team he went to and the scheme fit, that's more for Jake and you.
Well, I mean, Mike touched on it, right? Like a little bit of the scheme, the Dan Campbell defense. They lose, I think, both coordinators this year, right? So you could argue that, Detroit's got some rebuilding to do. They move some pieces from inside the organization in terms of coaching staff, shuffle some guys around, try to keep that same DNA around the defense. But Jake, like, where do you think the movement from where they were, who they gave up, and transitioning over to Reed, is this a plus or a minus for the Lions?
I think it's a plus. I am curious to see, day one, how it all kind of meshes together. But I do think it's a plus. I think he's a better corner than Carlton Davis. Yeah, I mean, when you look at Carlton and what he did, I mean, it was very impressive. I will say you are getting a little bit smaller there because I think Carlton Davis is about 6'1", 200 pounds.
He is
so
your
prototypical
cornerback.
Yeah, but what I like with Reed is he's giving you an attitude. He's got that chip on his shoulder. He's going to go at you. He doesn't care who you are, and that's how he played in New York. He was ferocious, fearless. The guy is not afraid to press you. Again, he can play in his own scheme too if you want to go that route. I just think he is an all-around very good corner. And as a guy that came in as a 5th-round pick and a dude that really had to develop and, potentially just labeled as a return man and maybe a slot corner at best, the fact that he has gone out and essentially totally outperformed his draft stock and went and got paid, it's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool. And a hell of a football player. I think he is an all-around just really, really good football player. So, yeah, in my opinion, he was the best cornerback available, and the Lions did a great thing by bringing him in and replacing one of the other really good corners in the market, Carlton Davis.
Yeah, no, Mike mentioned it too, Jake, in that, DJ Reed was on a team with Sauce Gardner, and there was an argument the last year and a half that he was actually the better of those two corners. Obviously,
Yeah.
Sauce had an amazing rookie year, and then we saw some slide in year two. But, DJ Reed, to your point, outperformed his draft stock and arguably was the best corner on that team last year. You get him out of the East, he's gone. But there has been a lot of activity in the AFC East, namely with the New England Patriots. The Patriots have done more in terms of free agent signings this year than any other team. They've spent the most money, they've made the most moves. They are really in a rebuilding mode. This is the Mike Vrabel New England Patriots, the reestablishment of the Bill Belichick lineage, like all of these things that you want to say it is, right? But again, we have the Patriots, and they go out and make the largest move in terms of actual capital for free agency. And they signed, I think, in all of our opinions, probably the best interior defensive lineman on the market. He was also a Super Bowl winner. He made a transition from being a thumper, a run stopper, to being a guy who could also get after the quarterback. Again, he played on arguably the most talented defensive line in football last year. And so you could say maybe he had more opportunities because he wasn't doubled inside. But Milton Williams, number 2 in our rank this for free agency, signs with the New England Patriots for $104 million. This is a big signing. We talked about this off air before the show. You could say that he was the marquee signing. We don't have him ranked as our number 1, but all the intangibles, he got better every year that he was in Philadelphia, and obviously a very talented front four for the Super Bowl champions. But Jake, a guy both you and I were very, very high on. How do you like this move by the Patriots? Obviously, they haven't been skimping in free agency. They didn't skimp on Williams this year. But, I mean, what do you think about $104 million for Milton Williams?
It's a lot of money, but this D-line market is super inflated. I mean, you look across the board at how much these dudes are getting paid. I mean, there's some players like Poona Ford, who was a Buffalo Bill, couldn't even see the field, gets over $10 million essentially a season with the Rams. So, yeah, I mean, when you look at it, the value is there. He's young. He's only 26 years old, and the dude's super athletic. I think he ended up running like a 4.6 or something coming into the NFL at the combine, Louisiana kid. And let me tell you, I mean, he's not the biggest dude by any means. I think he's only like 290 pounds. But yeah, as Tony mentioned, it's interesting because you'd think a guy that's so quick like that would be an elite pass rusher. It took him some years to really develop that skill set. And the second he developed that, which really I think was due in part being next to Jalen Carter and some other dogs on that Philadelphia D-line.
Yeah.
Doesn't hurt, right? But what he did in the Super Bowl, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery, allowed him to get paid. And this year had a career high 5 sacks. So great move by New England. Hate it for us because this is now the opposite, a guy coming into our division that's going to supposedly wreak havoc. You pair him with some other guys, Christian Barmore coming back from injury, and some other absolute dogs in New England. I think Vrabel is really building himself a nice defense there, and it starts with him. So, yeah. Guy went and got paid, and well-earned money right there.
Milton Williams, $104 million, Mike. Obviously, he is going to be a force to reckon with for the Buffalo Bills 2-3 times a year, depending on how the playoffs break out. But the Patriots have done a lot. We not only did they sign Williams, they really did a lot to bolster a number of different pieces. Obviously, the most recent one was on the offensive line with them signing Diggs to a 3-year deal. But, the Patriots, all of a sudden, a lot of people are high on them. How do you like the move to go get Williams in what Jake mentioned was a very busy, very deep free agency class this year? There was more money spent on defensive linemen than any other position in free agency in 2025. Do you like the Williams signing for $104 million?
So I always, that's a lot of money, like Jake said. I always worry, is it him? A little bit of it, for sure, maybe a lot of it, is the players around him. Jake, like you said, it's taken him a while. So one good thing, there's there's low tread on that tire, so to say. He's been a rotational piece. I think last year he had 500 snaps, but that might have been the most he's had. in his career so far in one season. I worry. It's not a good run stopper. Not at all. So again, he's got that juice to get to the at 290. He's got that juice to get to it's what 6 sacks in the season, and
5 last year in 2024, I think.
Yeah, it's 6 sacks last year in the season, and then of course 2 in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's crazy how him and the other gentleman, they only had between them, the one we're going to talk about next, they had 4.5 sacks, and they all came in the Super Bowl. None of the other playoff games did they have one. So I know we can bring up who the Patriots have picked up in free agency, and they're a team that's starting to scare me. Starting to scare me a lot.
We already talked about one of them. Carlton Davis signs with them. They also picked up Harold Landry, an edge player that obviously has just an absolute dog coming off the edge. They picked up, picked up a linebacker, Robert Spillane, Morgan Moses across the offensive line. They also picked up another cornerback in Bradbury. So they did a lot of moves. They also brought in Chasen, who's another edge. So a lot on the defensive side.
Big boy.
Yeah. So they obviously made a lot of moves on the defensive side. 4 players across the defensive front, obviously capped with Williams being the key free agent signed across all 32 teams in the league. But, the Patriots now are starting to get some momentum. I've seen their win totals kind of drift up from 4-5 to 6-7. People like what they're doing. Obviously, they've got a young quarterback in Drake May, but as Buffalo Bill fans, Jake, like what do you think of all of this activity in the New England Patriots and Vrabel and everything that they're doing? What do you think of this momentum?
Does it scare me? No. Does it impress me? Yes. They're spending a lot of money. They have the cap room to do it. Why not? Go get it, right? I think the Patriots can be a 10-7 team this year, just based on signings alone. I'm not ready to crown them AFC East champs or anything like that. They don't have Josh Allen. Okay, plain and simple. You don't have Josh Allen, you're not going to win the division. Listen, you can give us a run for our money, and we have lost games to New England Patriots-led teams. Led by the likes of like Mac Jones and who was the other? Bailey Zappi and some other guys, right, in the past. And you just sit there and shake your head like, how did this happen? But come playoff time, I don't see that happening. So to me, I think absolutely they got better. They signed a guy who I talked about before the show, Garrett Bradbury, to be their new starting center. They went and got Morgan Moses on the O-line. I think that is certainly a core that they need to build upon too. I think they should probably go take Will Campbell in the draft if I'm being them. I know a lot of people have been rumoring Travis Hunter to be the guy that they're going to take, but to me, you got to still build that offensive line. I think it definitely starts there, but they have gotten significantly better on the defensive side of the ball, and they added a former Buffalo Bill and Steph Diggs at the receiver position. So going to be interesting to see how they perform this year. I love Drake May. To be honest with you, I thought he was the best quarterback in last year's class. Time will tell if that really comes to fruition. I think as far as the season he had, you can't really point to him being the best in that class, but I think time will show that he was the actual best quarterback in that class. So, yeah, I mean, they're a young building team, and the future is bright, but I'm not ready to say the dynasty is back.
I would say this, when you look across the AFC East, other than the Bills, I mean, the Dolphins have it feels like they've missed their time, right? Like, again, they still have a lot of pieces in place, but it feels like maybe the current version of this team is not the best version, and they're heading more south than they are north. Obviously, the Jets make a pretty good signing in their own in terms of Justin Fields, in terms of like a ceiling play, what Fields could be compared to maybe what he is. His floor is pretty low, but his ceiling is obviously high. But neither of those teams really, I guess to your point, Jake, strike fear in the hearts of anyone. And so it really is, when you're in the AFC East, how close can you get to the Bills? And it feels like the Patriots and everything they've done in this offseason have really positioned themselves to have a chance to be a wild card team, to your point, to win 10 games in a very difficult, highly contested AFC. But in the AFC East, there's a chance because they're playing the Jets and the Dolphins twice a year. Mike, I toss it over to you. Jake referenced Zappi, who also was a free agent move. I think he signed with the Kansas City Chiefs in free agency, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so he's still floating around. But, when we circle back to this, when we look back on the signing of Milton Williams a year from now, like, what are Buffalo Bills fans going to be saying about this signing with him and the Patriots?
Well, they were 21st in defense last year in the league. So just by adding Landry and Milton Williams, they're going to improve greatly.
Significant upgrades, no question.
Significant.
Bobby Spillane, too. Don't forget about him. Very underrated
Yes.
player. Great signing.
Yeah. So those alone on the defensive side, going to take them up another notch. Don't forget, they got a high draft pick coming up as well.
They do.
So who knows? I do agree with Jake. The offensive line, got to share that up for Drake May. And Jake, you probably know, but how were they last year? I mean, how was that offensive line?
Not where they should be. I think they definitely played better than a lot of people thought, but there were some musical chairs going on there too. And I'll tell you what, this is no disrespect to Vidarian Lowe, but if you plan on rolling with him as your starting left tackle heading into the 2026 season, I just don't know, because you got two guys there, Caden Wallace and Vidarian Lowe, that are really competing for that left tackle spot. I think Caden Wallace, I like him as a Penn State guy, but he's kind of a project player coming into the league. They took him in the third round, 2024, and then you get Vidarian Lowe, who I think they traded for, came from Minnesota. There's just some question marks there. I think they did some good things. They signed Garrett Bradbury. They brought in Morgan Moses at the right tackle position, who's a solid player. But, they're just, it's still, to me, they're missing some pieces on that O-line. So I think that's maybe the number one area of concern. I know a lot of people look at the receiver position, but you signed Steph, so maybe you can go take that left tackle in the first round.
Yeah, I think that will be their focus. Don't forget they signed Matt Collins, one of my favorite players.
They sure did.
Buffalo Bills last year. I mean, love that guy. Matt Collins, Steph, and so again, if they get that O-line shirt up, I do agree with you. I think they're at least a wild card team. Dare I say that they're going to be better than the Jets? Yes. Dare I say they're going to be better than the Dolphins? I don't know. I don't think I can say that right now. I don't.
And I don't want to sit here and try to be like that cocky Bills fan now. It feels good to actually feel like, man, we're still sitting pretty. We're still the kings of the AFC East. But I also don't want to just not acknowledge the fact that these other AFC East teams have a shot, and that the Patriots have gotten significantly better just in this offseason alone. New head coach, making some good roster moves. I don't want to dismiss that. So I don't want it to come across like I'm just being a homer here. Listen, I've gone through my years, right? Listen, we lost how many games to the New England Patriots? I'm not going to sit here and toot my own horn that much. It feels good, though, to be able to say, hey,
Tony,
Bills are a pretty good team.
You have an unbiased opinion. Sounds like he's being a homer to me.
As a guy. No. I mean, I would say this, right? To Jake's point, none of the teams strike fear. If I was a Buffalo Bills fan, in my heart, the Bills are clearly the class of the AFC East, right? I would say this: the Patriots now, with everything that they've done, if anyone in that division was going to punch the Bills in the mouth, it feels like it's the Patriots. To your point, Mike, I don't know if they're a better team than the Miami Dolphins are, but the Dolphins, the Bills have beat them into submission over the years, right? The Dolphins they just feel like a soft team when you look at how they performed against the Bills. And I just feel like if there's anybody in there, New England's the one team that could have some edge, some fire, some of that Dan Campbell, like he said, bite their kneecaps off. That Vrabel's that kind of player coach that can inspire things and maximize what they have, and the moves that they've done in free agency and potentially what they will still do in the draft. They could end up in a very good position where they're a 10-win team fighting for a playoff berth. And if Drake May, to Jake's point, is 75-80% of what everybody thinks he could be, that's a dangerous team. That's a team that could really go out and compete, not only in the AFC East, but in the AFC in general this year.
Agree.
Yeah.
So staying on the defensive side of the ball, we'll rank this with our number one free agent signing, consensus across all three of us. We've said it multiple times. This was probably the year of defensive line and free agency, and we all said our guy, the biggest signing, again, another Philadelphia Eagle. I think he played 6 or 7 seasons with the Eagles, drafted there, one of the best defensive lines in football. But Josh Sweat coming off of maybe not his best year, because I think back in 2022 we had an 11 sack season, but highly productive. 8 sacks this year, a ton of tackles. Clearly, all three of us felt like this was a very, very strong signing for the Arizona Cardinals. But Mike, I'll kick it over to you first. You like the Sweat signing. We all said he was probably the best one. Him and Freeman were 1-2. But Josh went to the Cardinals. Give me your 5-cent tour of this move.
Again, not watching the Cardinals a lot. Upcoming team. They really got off to a slow start last year, and started to turn it on. And that's kind of like we opened up against them last year, and we were fortunate enough to come away with a win. And they got better as the year went on. And again, not looking at their team in full. Jake can probably speak better to that. Anytime you upgrade your defense with a guy like this, you're going to take that next step. And I can give you again. I'll just give you from the stat side of things for him. So give me a second here. So the last couple years, 2022 is 83.8 elite guy. Like in 2023, 67.2, and then last year 70. And again, your stats from your sacks, Tony. Like you said, he had 11 sacks in 2022. He had 6.5 in 23, and then he had 8 in 24. Again, when I always worry, like they had such an elite line, you wonder how they're going to perform without those guys next to them. So I do like the signing. I think it's a nice move. Jay can probably speak better to how that will fit in with what they're running over there in Arizona. But great signing here. Again, he had a 2.5 sacks in the Super Bowl, and Williams had 2 in the Super Bowl. So what a way to end the year, right? And the last game of the year, you win it, 2.5 sacks. Everyone's going to remember the game that he had. And well deserved. Good pick.
Jake, Mike mentioned it. I mean, Sweat had arguably his best game in the biggest moment, which was the Super Bowl. He signs this deal. It's 4 years. It's almost $80 million. But when you kind of look at edge rushers, right, outside of the kid that came from the Colts, Deo or Landry, there really wasn't a lot of difference makers in terms of edge rushers in the market in free agency this year. There was some names. Obviously, the Bills signed Bosa. DeMarcus Lawrence was also on the block. Fowler went to a new team. So there were names, guys that, at certain points of their careers had kind of peaked. But, Sweat was one of those guys. I think you could say he was the best edge player available, much like we saw with Williams. How much of what he got this year do you think was due to what Mike had called out that Super Bowl performance, that we saw him just absolutely be unblockable in that game? 2 sacks, was a difference maker. They had no answers for him. Kansas City didn't in that game. Do you think, signing a guy for that kind of money who's already had 6-7 years in the league, and again, edge is a little bit different than interior defensive tackle, do you think it's a good investment by the Cardinals?
I do. I think he would have gotten that money regardless. He's only 27 years old, and with how inflated the defensive end market is, it was inevitable, right? I mean, Malcolm Kuntz got 1 year, $12 million. Like,
Yeah,
they're no disrespect to him, University of Buffalo guy. I love Malcolm
yeah.
Kuntz, right?
Hassan
But
Reddick,
like,
$14 million. Yeah,
almost a bargain, honestly, when you look
yeah.
at it just based on his pedigree. But it's like, yeah, you look at Josh Sweat. This was my number one guy that I actually wanted the Buffalo Bills to target this year in free agency. Obviously, didn't happen. Yeah, what he did in Philly was extremely impressive, and he reunites with Jonathan Gannon, who's the head coach in Arizona. So it actually made sense. It's kind of like a reuniting of the forces here. He had his best season as a pro underneath Jonathan Gannon when he was the DC there. So yeah, I think it's a match made in heaven, and I'm really salty about it, to be honest with you. The Cardinals have a nice young defense too. They run a base 3-4, so it's a perfect scenario for him. He's just going to be rushing the passer, be that stand up edge, outside linebacker type position, and do what he does best. So They went ahead and also signed a really good nose and Delvin Tomlinson, another guy. It would have been nice to come here to Buffalo, but instead goes to Arizona. A really nice signing by them, but they got some players there. I mean, Baron Browning's a good young player. They signed Akeem Davis Gaither as well. They got Mac Wilson, and they drafted Darius Robinson in the first round last year out of Mizzou, who I think has some upside. Justin Jones, solid player there too. On the back end, you still got Buda Baker there. And then, offensively, you got Marvin Harrison Jr., you got James Conner, you got Kyler Murray, who can be a good player. And honestly, you look at some of his previous years, like, yeah, sure, there's some questions about whether he's dedicated and whatnot, but he can be a game changer in some ways. And then you got Trey McBride and some other good players there. So I like the team. They are a wild card still to me because you really don't know what to expect from them. I think they outperformed a lot of people's expectations last year, but this year, you're building up that nice young defense. You go and sign Josh Sweat as your marquee free agent signing, and you're building around that. And it's a great move by them, and I'm salty as hell about it.
Yeah, I mean, the Cardinals, you mentioned it. They go out and get Tomlinson. They got Davis Gaither. They brought in Collier and Walker. So, 5 of their 6 moves on the defensive side of the football. Obviously, to your point, with Kyler Murray behind center, you have the ability to have these explosion plays at any point in time on offense. But they really needed to shore up the defense. And like we talked about earlier, in a division where it feels like the Rams are the class of that division, but by no means is there a glass ceiling. Like the Rams could be terrible. They could be great. We really don't know. We expect them to be much better. They obviously, like we talked about before the show started, signed Javonte Williams. They got rid of Kupp. So there's a clear upgrade on the offensive side of the football. But that division, when we were talking about Darnold, is pretty wide open, right? Like San Francisco's on the decline. It's an aging team that's already started to move some pieces. It feels like their window's closed. And to your point, Jake, the Cardinals are now this team where it's like, would you be surprised if they won 12 games? No. Would you be surprised if they won 5? No. It's the range of outcomes for these AFC West or NFC West teams is so wide. It makes these kinds of signings, I think, even more attractive. And Sweat, like we talked about, I think he's going to make almost double what the next edge player in the market made in free agency, which is crazy to think for a guy who's been in the league, for as long as he has. But in a cycle where you have a guy like DeMarcus Lawrence who made $40 million after playing 11 seasons, like that just blows me away that these guys are still in the league and doing these things. But Sweat, our number 1 free agency signing, a little bit of a curveball here. I want to throw this out to each of you. We talked about the 5 best, but as a little bit of an extra bonus and overtime for the Nickel City Mafia crew out there, most interesting signing. And I'll just because I'll throw it out there first to kind of lay the groundwork for what I would think. When I say interesting, something that kind of makes you think about the shock waves that it sends throughout the league or through that team, the implications for what it means in terms of the draft or the overall culture within a franchise. My most interesting move, clearly, because we talked about it before the show, was the signing of Russell Wilson with the New York Giants. And again, not only on the heels of them signing Jameis Winston to a deal, but again, I think the big thing for me is the Giants were clearly the ones that everyone had kind of earmarked in terms of the Shadir Sanders market and the draft this year, right? Sanders he's been rumored that that's where he wants to go. That's where his dad, obviously Dion, very heavily involved in this process with his son throughout his career, has had a heavy hand in everything that he's done. And now all of a sudden there's clouds or specters around what happens with Shadir Sanders. And I threw it out there to you guys. For me, it clearly points to 2 completely opposite things, but both things, again, anything can happen. He could still end up a Giant. You never know. But you've got a crowded quarterback room with now Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and DeVito already there. The likelihood that they bring in also a rookie for some pretty big money is fairly low. There's tons of questions about that coaching staff and whether or not they're going to be there. But this tells me Shadir Sanders is not going to the Giants for 1 of 2 reasons. During the evaluation process, they just said, look, great kid, we love him, not going to work for what we want to do. We see better value in 2026 or down the board farther. Or two, he's so good, we're not going to get him at the third draft pick, and the Cleveland Browns are going to take him with the second pick overall. So we've got to do something else to shore up our quarterback rooms. Two diametrically different reasons for making that decisions, but I think both point to Shadir Sanders not being a giant. But that Russell Wilson sign, to me, in terms of all the implications with the draft and what that means for quarterbacks coming out this year, and then the other free agents that are still on the market, I would say my most interesting move of 2025 free agency was Russell Wilson. Jake, I will throw it over to you next. Give me your most interesting move of the free agency cycle.
It's kind of a compilation of several moves here, and I hate to kind of go away from your topic of most interesting move because I think it's multiple moves here, and I think the Minnesota Vikings have quietly had the best offseason in terms of free agency. I know they lose Sam Darnold, but they signed two really good interior defensive linemen and Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, and then on the other side of the ball, in the trenches, Ryan Kelly and Will Fries, both from the Indianapolis Colts. So to me, I feel like they have won the offseason just with those four moves alone. Those are some of the names that maybe didn't get as much attention, although several of them are Pro Bowl players. You talk about Jonathan Allen, one of the better defensive tackles in football over the last decade here. Javon Hargrave, who also has had his moments, had pretty solid career, came from San Fran, didn't really do as much as we thought he would in San Fran. And then, Ryan Kelly and Will Fries. Ryan Kelly's a Pro Bowl center. You have to replace Garrett Bradbury with someone, so you do it with Ryan Kelly. What better player to do it than that? You get him at a $9 million an average season, and I think there's an out after his first season, which is huge for them. And then Will Fries, who's one of the better young and upcoming guards. So I think they've quietly kind of won the offseason here, and just have done some really special things. So I think those are very interesting signings because they were kind of under the radar and no one really shed a ton of light on that. I mean, they might be in Minnesota, but just from the outside looking in, I haven't heard a whole lot about it, and I almost forgot that they did sign there. So those were mine.
I mean, it's interesting that you point to the Vikings because to your point, they obviously Fries is probably the biggest signing in terms of upgrades from a position standpoint. They do a lot to upgrade the interior offensive line, but they keep Murphy, they keep Jackson, they keep Harrison Smith, so they keep some of those marquee defensive players that were up for free agency. They retain those guys, and they bring in some guys, right? They bring in Allen, they bring in Hargrave. So again, I think you could say that they made some pretty serious moves to not only bolster what was already a decent offensive line, but filling some holes. And then also, on the defensive side of the football, keeping those guys and adding to that. Interesting. I like the take on the team, the most interesting offseason of free agency. That's a pretty nice little sneaky pick there with the Minnesota Vikings, Jake. So I got to give you props for that one.
I appreciate it, man. I had to bring it up because it's been on my mind, and I'm like, I got to find a way to work this into the show. So, hell yeah.
Mike, what about you? Give me your most interesting move, the best team, like who won free agency. What was the move that kind of was the most interesting to you in terms of this year's free agency cycle?
Homer alert. Homer alert.
Homer alert.
Joey Bosa.
Come on.
There were guys
all right, Mike,
that we wanted. Some of the big names, everyone was hoping we get Myles Garrett. Everybody wanted him. Then you start seeing Max Crosby got re-signed, and then I never even thought in a million years Joey Bosa would be an option for us. And I know the last 3 years have not been his best. 2022, he had 2.5 sacks, then 6.5 and 5. But last year was a year where he played in 14 games. The 2 years prior to that, just injury. He's always been known as an injury-prone guy. Starting in 2022 is where that really started to hit him. What I love about this is it's a 1 year, $12.5 million, fully guaranteed. It's a prove-it year. He's going to be highly motivated. And I can guarantee you no one in the AFC East is happy about this signing. Not one person. He is a game changer. He's that guy. If you need someone to step up, he's also extremely good against the run, where we've struggled. We've struggled against the run, our defense. He's going to help that situation out. You need a closer, he'll be that guy. So I love this signing. You may not. You may say, well, why you only have 5 sacks last year? I'm not sure. He's, again, injured the prior 2 years. Maybe still just, I think I saw in a press conference, of course, by Whitney say this, it's the best he's felt in a long time. It feels like and I was thinking to myself, why would anyone want to leave LA to come to cold Buffalo? But my thinking is he's seen enough of those wildfires, Tony, that we're very familiar with. He's seen enough of that. He's maybe had a couple too many earthquakes. He says, I can handle the snow. But I love this pick, Tony. Just 12.5 million. He's going to be fully motivated. He has a big year. He sets himself up for his final few years in the NFL. Maybe more. I'm not saying he'll only be a couple more years, but this dude is that guy. And I feel like nobody's happy that the Buffalo Bills got him.
Well, I would say this. I think that this is one of those signings where, again, the price that they paid for him, the upside potentially that you get with a guy like him, is high, but the floor, I think, potentially is low. Like he was obviously a snap count, a pitch count guy in Los Angeles his last couple of years. They used him situationally, and I think because of that, they were able to maximize in terms of the number of games that he played in this year. Not as productive as he was, but also Bosa is a guy that you have to allocate people to. And to your point, Mike, you can't just ignore who's on the edge when Joey Bosa is out there. When he's at his best, he is a difference maker, a guy that is unblockable. But you run the risk of getting a guy, to your point, that could be injured 30-40% of the time and off the field. But again, I think the price that they paid for him is the key in this scenario. They didn't pay very much. To your point, it's a prove it contract where if things don't work out, they part ways and each party can kind of enter the market next year and figure out what the next step is. And again, in a market, I mentioned it earlier, where 12 years in the league, DeMarcus Lawrence gets $42 million. It's not unheard of for a guy like Bosa, who could be a difference maker on this team, depending on how they use him in the scheme, to get the money that he did. So it's not that I'm not a fan of the move, but I think it's for the value of what they did. I agree with you 100%. Bring in this guy. If it works out, you look like the smartest kid in the room. If it doesn't, okay, we gave it a shot and we move on from there. Jake, is there anybody else that not to make this all about the Buffalo Bills, but this is a Buffalo Bills channel. Is there anybody else out there that you think the Bills can or should still make a run at? Whether, again, obviously the free agency window here is all but closed, but is there anything else out there that you're like, man, if we could add this guy, this would be a difference for us, or a position of need that needs to be filled in the draft, maybe?
Honestly, I would say, oh man, I don't even know. I'm trying to think. I think we're cooked. I think we have to go to the draft now. I really do. I'm sorry to say that. Yeah, all of the free agents that really excited me to a level are now gone. I would say the only other guy, maybe Asante Samuel Jr., corner from the Chargers. Has had some injury-ridden seasons, and the last 2 years have been a little rough for him, but he's still young enough. He's got the bloodlines. I mean, his dad is really, in my opinion, a Hall of Fame corner, and a kid that came into the league and did pretty well his first 2 seasons. Has struggled at times with tackling, and that's something that Sean McDermott does preach, believe it or not, even though we see it every week where they miss a ton of easy tackles. So it'll be interesting, but I think he'd be a great fit in our scheme, especially being that we're more of a zone scheme, although supposedly we might be running some more man coverage this year. It'll be interesting. Time will tell. But I would like to maybe take a flyer on him. So Asante Samuel Jr. would be a name that I would look at. And he's been rumored. Supposedly he's supposed to be signing with the Bills, and he hasn't done it just yet.
Yeah, it's an interesting pick. Obviously, he does have the brand name with the Samuels last name, and he's had some good years in LA. So
Yeah.
again, I would say it's not a bad move. Mike, just before we close it out here, totally off topic. In the draft, where do the Bills go? First round pick.
I'm hoping D tackle, Kenneth Grant, or edge. And I'm actually going, and I'm going to go further than that. I'm saying the first 2 rounds, we have 3 picks right now. We have 1 in the first, 2 in the second. I'll be upset unless like a guy like Matthew Golden drops to us at 30. I don't want us taking touching offense at all in the first 2 rounds. That's my take. I know Jake's a little more forgiving on that. He would like to see a receiver, but I also know how the Bills utilize these receivers. We saw it last year. Everybody eats. I think you can get a nice speedster in the later rounds. We got a ton of draft picks this year. We can get a speedster if that's the guy you're looking for. Other than Matthew Golden, I do know, check this out. Isaiah
Bond.
Bond is being hosted by the Buffalo Bills. I think they're meeting with him. He's meeting with them in Buffalo tomorrow. And I think Bond is a second round. People are saying maybe first 2 round. So maybe we are going to use one of those picks in the second for a receiver. But yeah, Tony, it's all about defense for me. We saw the blueprint. I want to beat these damn Chiefs. I want to beat them. And we saw the blueprint in the Super Bowl. And we've just, every time we play them, we don't have a guy who gets home. That's why we signed Joey Bosa. Let's get some big guys in the inside to bring, to free up those edge guys and shut down the run. And so for me, all about defense, interior and edge.
Jake, I kick it over to you. Mike wants to go defense. He wants the pass rush. He wants the run stopper. If the Bills are to reach here, right? If the stars align and the draft board falls and you've got a best available receiver sitting with that pick, right? Where all of a sudden it's like, holy cow, we never thought we'd be here. This kid's available. Who is that receiver, just to call out a position that you think would be a difference maker for the Bills?
It is Matthew Golden, 100%. I have watched enough tape on this kid. I made a short. Check it out on our channel. We did a short on Matthew Golden. Yeah, love the kid. His draft stock has certainly climbed since the combine. Guy ran like 4.29 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's impressive. But the thing is, he's not just a deep threat. He can run every route in the route tree. Size wise, he's pretty average size, 6 foot, $195, but reminds me a lot of like Antonio Brown, honestly. He can do a little bit of everything faster, honestly, too. He could stretch the field. He could run, intermediate routes. He could run short routes. He could run crossers, whatever you need him to do. He could be a boundary guy. It is everything that we could have used on that very last fateful drive against the Kansas City Chiefs. So I would be totally fine with that. I'm with Mike. I would like to go defense. If Golden is not there at 30, which he probably won't be, or if you're reaching, right, I wouldn't be mad if we traded up. If you have to get to like pick 20 or 18 or something like that, you trade up and you go and take Matthew Golden. I don't think a lot of people are upset with that. I don't think Mike would be too upset with that. I know it's, you're sacrificing some draft capital, but you are getting a game-changing player. And, the Josh Palmer thing, while I like the signing, and I had mentioned in our free agency, so maybe that's a guy to look at. I don't know if it solves the exact issue, at the receiver position. I'm hoping it does, but if Golden's available, run to the podium, please.
Yeah. Let me add to that, Jake. So it's kind of funny. Our friends over at Finn's Forecast, they did their mock draft today, and guess who fell to the Bills at number 30? Keith was very upset.
Get out of here.
Matthew Golden fell to them in the mock draft, and they took him for the Buffalo Bills. And Keith was like, "If that happens," he says, he said a few words. He's gonna be sick to his stomach, basically.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't be disappointed with that, Jake. But again, I feel like the need is there. My only concern is, we get them, and we don't utilize them. We got Keen Coleman last year. He basically was a first rounder. He was the first pick in the second round. We take him. He's that difference maker. He's that one that's going to keep the defenses honest. So I wouldn't mind it. But if we do that, we better have some focus on the defense, those next 2 picks in the second round. But I think, Jake, Isaiah Bond, we get him in the second round. You're not going to be too disappointed either, right?
No, but he doesn't offer everything that Golden offers. That's
4.34.
my
I
thing.
know, but he improved his 40 to 4.34 in the
I
pro
saw
day.
that.
I think it was 4.39 at the combine. So
Everybody runs faster at pro day. Like that. I don't care who you
Yeah.
talk to. Everyone runs a faster
I know.
time at their pro day.
That is true. But he was already a 4.39 guy. He wasn't.
Tone, did you have a pro day?
So yeah, I did compete in the pro day at Boise State when I was a senior.
What do we got numbers wise? What'd you do?
I did the bench press. So I did 225. I think I did it 27 or 28 times. So not
Okay.
crazy, but okay. And I ran a 4.87 at 298 pounds.
Dude,
Oh, you're moving.
dude,
Yeah, I was quick. I had to be.
What the heck? Made you to get a tryout or anything? You had to have
I'm
something.
5'11" on a good day, Jake. If I'm not fast, I'm getting trampled out there.
True. Elvis Doomerville, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
I wish Tony had a picture available, man. What a different, totally different person back then. 290. Look at him. He's half that right now.
Yeah, well, I would say this, right? Like after I got done playing, I had to rejoin the human race. So part of my application process was, going back to normal human sizes. So when you're 5'10" by 5'10", it doesn't bode well for you in normal everyday living.
But Tony, that's not the guy that your wife fell in love with. She fell in love with that 290 guy.
She did.
Right?
She does remind me of this quite often. She does say, "I do miss my teddy bear." So, during the holiday season, I have been known to add 10 to 15 pounds of fun-loving care to my body weight. But hey, it's all part of the deal. We get older, we get bigger, we get lighter. Guys go two ways. You get done playing, you either get bigger or you get smaller. I happen to go the latter way, which I think bodes well for me in everyday life. But it's you'll see, man. We see guys all the time when they get done playing, like they either blow up and you're like, oh my gosh, that guy's twice the guy that he was or half the guy that he was. So you got two choices when you get done playing ball.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. That will wrap us for this edition of Rank This Top 5 Free Agencies 2025. Jake, thanks again for hopping on late and staying in, burning the midnight oil up until 1 a.m. on the East Coast. And Mike, as always, the guru, the master of the Nickel City Mafia. Thanks again. Real quick, guys, before we go, regular shows, what's on tap for you guys here coming up as we get close to the draft?
Well, we're gonna go live. First 2 nights draft. We're gonna be collabing with the Fins Forecast. First, we're gonna be streaming to both channels, night 1 and night 2. So super excited about that. And then Jake and I usually have our weekly show. We'll be talking about more draft targets. We're talking exactly about what you asked us, like who we taking in that first round. Who are those targets? Who are the targets in the second? And then we'll start doing some mock drafts. Jake, it's that time. We haven't done any yet. We're a little bit behind the 8 ball on that, so we're going to start doing that on the next show.
Fired up.
Very nice.
Can't wait.
Very nice. Well, as Mike always says, drop a nickel on the subscribe button. Make sure that we'll keep all this content flowing directly to your YouTube channel. Share this with your friends. Thanks for tuning in today. Leave a comment down below. Tell us who is the best free agent signing. Tell us where we got wrong. Tell us who you like, what you thought teams missed. And we'll be back to do another Rank This show here in the future. Thanks again, guys. Have a great night.
Go Bills.
Thanks, Tony.